Before this whole disaster, I thought the biggest threat to my wedding was the seating chart. If you've never planned a wedding, let me save you some time. People always talk about trust, communication, and compromise. Nobody talks about the fact that a 48-year-old aunt you've met twice can become a geopolitical crisis because she refuses to sit within visual range of another aunt she has hated since 1997. Apparently, one borrowed casserole dish and a comment about curtains can start a family argument that lasts longer than some marriages. My name is Grant, I'm a lawyer, and 1 week before my wedding, I genuinely believed that family drama was the most stressful thing I'd be dealing with. I was wrong. Spectacularly wrong. The woman I was supposed to marry was Madeline. We'd been together for almost 4 years. We met through mutual friends, survived moving in together, survived assembling furniture from IKEA without ending the relationship, which honestly should qualify a couple for automatic marriage approval. Things weren't perfect. No relationship is. Madeline could spend 3 hours choosing a restaurant and then order the same thing she always ordered. I left cabinet doors open like they personally offended me. She watched reality shows and pretended they were social experiments. I watched courtroom documentaries and yelled at my television whenever somebody made an obviously terrible legal decision. We were normal. At least that's what I thought. The wedding was 7 days away. The deposits were paid. The venue was booked. Relatives were already arriving from different states. My mother had entered what I can only describe as her final wedding form. She called me 6 times a day. Not because she needed anything, just to verify that the wedding still existed. Meanwhile, Madeline was busy with final preparations and spending time with her bridesmaids. The bachelorette party was scheduled for Saturday night. I had absolutely no problem with it. Honestly, I encouraged it. If I had spent 6 months planning a wedding, dealing with vendors, relatives, invitations, flowers, photographers, caterers, and approximately 14,000 unexpected expenses, I'd probably want a night out too. That afternoon, her bridesmaids arrived at our apartment. There were 5 of them. Every one of them carried the energy of a person who had already made several bad decisions and intended to make more. The kind of women who say things like, "What's the worst that could happen?" 5 minutes before the worst thing happens. Madeline came out of the bedroom wearing a black dress and smiling. "You sure you're okay with this?" she asked. "Of course." I kissed her forehead. "Go have fun." Then I pointed at her friends. "My only request is that nobody ends up on the news." One of the bridesmaids laughed. Another said, "No promises." Everybody thought that was hilarious. At the time, if only I knew. They started heading toward the door. I was grabbing my wallet from the kitchen counter when I realized I'd left my phone charger in the bedroom. As I walked down the hallway, I heard voices near the front door. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. In fact, I wish I had never heard any of it. One of the bridesmaids laughed and said, "If he's really the one night won't matter." The group burst into laughter. Someone replied, "Exactly." More laughter. Then the front door opened, closed, and they were gone. I stood there for a second. Not because I thought Madeline was cheating. Not because I suspected anything. The comment was just strange. You know how sometimes a sentence doesn't make sense, but your brain still puts it on a shelf somewhere? That's what happened. I remember standing there thinking, what the hell does that even mean? One night won't matter? One night of what? But then I shrugged it off. They were going to a bachelorette party. Alcohol would be involved. People say stupid things when they're excited. End of story. Or so I thought. That evening I ordered takeout, watched a baseball game, answered a few work emails, and enjoyed what I assumed would be my last peaceful weekend as an unmarried man. Around midnight, I sent Madeline a text. "Hope you're having fun." A heart reaction came back. Nothing unusual. At 1 in the morning, I was still awake. At 2, I was annoyed. At 3, I was officially entering the stage known as, "I'm not worried, but I am definitely checking the clock every 5 minutes." Madeline finally came home shortly after 4. The apartment door opened quietly. She stepped inside and nearly jumped when she saw me sitting on the couch. Jesus, Grant. You say that like I'm the one coming home at 4. She laughed nervously. Sorry. At first glance she looked normal, just tired. Her makeup wasn't quite right. Her hair looked messier than when she left. Good party? I asked. The girls went a little crazy. I gathered that. She kicked off her shoes. I'm exhausted. Normally Madeline would tell me everything, every ridiculous detail. Who got drunk? Who cried? Who danced on a table? Who started drama? That night she didn't. She gave short answers, almost rehearsed answers. Then she disappeared into the bathroom. I remember sitting there thinking she was probably just tired. That's all. Nothing more. A few minutes later she climbed into bed beside me. I rolled over. She kissed my cheek. Love you. Love you too. Simple. Normal. The end of an ordinary night. Except it wasn't. Because as I turned off the lamp, I noticed something strange. Madeline was lying on her side with her back to me. And for the first time in nearly 4 years together, she wouldn't look me in the eyes. The next few days were surprisingly normal. And looking back, that was probably the weirdest part. Madeline acted like everything was fine. She laughed. She talked about flower arrangements. She complained about relatives. She showed me photos of table decorations that all looked exactly the same to me. Apparently there were major differences. I was informed of this repeatedly. Meanwhile, I buried myself in work. Being a lawyer has one major advantage. When your personal life gets stressful, somebody else's problems are usually worse. A client was fighting over a business contract. Another was threatening to sue his neighbor over a fence. One guy spent nearly $20,000 arguing over a parking space. Human beings are incredible. Give us intelligence, technology, and thousands of years of civilization, and we'll still end up fighting over 6 feet of concrete. By Wednesday afternoon, I had almost convinced myself I was overthinking the whole bachelorette party thing. Maybe I had imagined the tension. Maybe Madeline had simply been tired. Maybe that weird comment from her bridesmaid was exactly what I originally assumed it was. A dumb joke. Then my email arrived. The subject line was blank. No greeting. No explanation. Just a video file. At first I assumed it was spam or malware. I almost deleted it. Then I noticed something strange. The sender address looked real. Not professional, not fake. Just anonymous enough to be suspicious. Curiosity won. I clicked the file. The video opened. For the first few seconds I had no idea what I was looking at. Loud music, flashing lights, a crowded bar, someone filming from across the room. Then I saw her, Madeline, my fiancée, my future wife. She was standing at the bar, laughing, holding a drink. Nothing alarming, nothing worth canceling a wedding over. Then the camera shifted. A man stepped closer to her. Tall, dark hair, expensive-looking shirt. The kind of guy whose entire personality probably came pre-installed with his watch. Madeline smiled at him. He smiled back. Still not great. Still not a disaster. Then the video continued. The distance between them kept shrinking. The touching became more casual, more familiar, far more comfortable than I was comfortable watching. My stomach started tightening, not because I had caught her doing something undeniable, but because I knew Madeline. I knew her body language. I knew her smile. I knew the difference between being polite and being interested. And she looked interested. Very interested. The video lasted less than 3 minutes. It felt much longer. When it ended, I sat there staring at my screen, waiting, almost expecting some explanation to magically appear. Nothing did. I played it again, then a third time, then a fourth. Every replay somehow made me feel worse. The lawyer part of my brain started working immediately. Lawyers love facts. Facts are simple. Facts don't care about feelings. Unfortunately, the facts weren't helping. The facts were, the woman in the video was Madeline. The man wasn't me. She looked very comfortable around him. And somebody wanted me to see it. Those were the facts. Everything else was speculation. That evening, I got home before she did. For the first time in years, I felt nervous waiting for her. The apartment door opened. Madeline walked in carrying shopping bags. "Hey, hey," she smiled, then paused. "You look serious. Occupational hazard. Lawyer joke?" "Lawyer joke." She laughed. Normally, I would have laughed too. Instead, I reached into my briefcase and handed her my phone. "What's this?" "Watch." The smile disappeared. She looked at the screen. The video started playing. For a few seconds, she didn't react. Then she froze. Not dramatically. Not like someone in a movie. Just enough. Enough for me to notice. Enough for me to know. The color drained slightly from her face. She watched the entire thing. Silently. When it ended, she handed my phone back. The room became very quiet. Finally, she spoke. "Who sent you that?" "Interesting." "Not." "What is that?" "Not." "Where did you get this?" "Not." "Grant, this isn't what it looks like." Her first question was, "Who sent you that?" I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "That's your concern?" "Of course that's my concern." I shook my head. "My concern is why my fiancée is acting like she's on a date 3 days before our wedding." Her expression hardened. Immediately. Defensively. Like she'd already rehearsed this conversation. "Are you serious?" "Very." "It was a bachelorette party." "I can see that." "People were drinking." "I can see that too." She crossed her arms. Nothing happened. That sentence should have made me feel better. Instead, it somehow made me feel worse. Because she said it too quickly, like she'd been waiting to say it. I stared at her. "Then why do you look nervous?" For the first time, she looked away. Only for a second. But it happened. Then came the sentence that changed everything. The sentence that, looking back, probably saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. Madeline shrugged. Then she said, "Grant, that happened before the wedding." I frowned. She continued, "It doesn't count." For a moment, I genuinely thought I had misheard her. I almost asked her to repeat it. Then I realized she was completely serious. And suddenly, the video wasn't the biggest problem anymore. I wish I could tell you I immediately stood up, delivered a brilliant speech, and walked out of the apartment like some movie character. I didn't. Mostly because my brain was still trying to process what I had just heard. Not the video, the sentence. Because here's the thing. People can make mistakes. People can do stupid things. People can have terrible judgment after too many drinks. I understand all of that. What I couldn't understand was the logic. The logic was somehow worse than the video itself. It doesn't count. Imagine robbing a bank and telling the judge, "Your Honor, technically I wasn't arrested yet, so it doesn't count." Imagine crashing a car and explaining to your insurance company, "The accident happened before I called you, so it doesn't count." That's not how reality works. Unfortunately, reality and Madeline seem to be having a disagreement. I looked at her. "Explain that." She rolled her eyes, like I was the difficult one in this conversation. "We weren't married yet." "Okay. So I don't understand why you're acting like I broke wedding vows." I stared at her. The scary part? She sounded sincere, not manipulative, not defensive, sincere, as if this was a perfectly reasonable argument. I suddenly remembered the comment from her bridesmaid, "If he's really the one night won't matter." Sentence hit differently now. Much differently. Because for the first time, I started wondering if that wasn't a joke at all. Maybe it was a philosophy. Maybe this entire group of women genuinely believed there was some magical force field around a wedding date, as if bad decisions made on Thursday disappeared on Saturday. Like emotional consequences were legally prohibited from crossing the ceremony line. As a lawyer, I can confidently state that this is not how contracts work. Madeline kept talking. Nothing happened. I nodded slowly. That's not actually the issue anymore." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm more concerned about the fact that you think it wouldn't matter if something had happened." For the first time, she didn't have an answer. The conversation ended shortly afterward. Not because we solved anything, because we didn't. We just got tired. There are arguments that bring people closer together. This wasn't one of them. That night, I barely slept. I spent hours staring at the ceiling. Then, at around 3 in the morning, an idea appeared. And once it appeared, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The prenup. Originally, our agreement was fairly standard. Neither of us was rich. Neither of us owned private islands. Neither of us had secret Swiss bank accounts. The agreement mostly existed because I'm a lawyer, and lawyers tend to wear seatbelts even when sitting in parked cars. We prepare for things. It's practically a personality disorder. By the time I arrived at my office the next morning, I had already made my decision. If what happened before marriage supposedly didn't matter, then there should be absolutely no issue creating clear rules for after marriage. Simple, fair, reasonable, at least according to me. Around lunchtime, I called the attorney who had helped draft the original agreement. A few hours later, I had a revised version. One new section, very specific, very direct. In plain English, it basically said, if either spouse engaged in an affair during the marriage, the financial consequences would be severe. No loopholes, no creative interpretations, no Olympic-level mental gymnastics, just consequences. I brought the document home that evening. Madeline was sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through wedding messages. She smiled when I walked in. That smile disappeared the second she saw the folder. What's that? A revised prenup. The smile vanished completely. A what? I sat down across from her. A revised prenup. 3 days before the wedding? Correct. Her eyes narrowed. I slid the papers across the table. She started reading. The longer she read, the worse her expression became. By page 3, she looked like she wanted to throw the document through a wall. By page 5, she looked like she wanted to throw me through a wall. Finally, she dropped the papers. You're kidding. No. This is insane. It's actually very straightforward. Grant. Her voice rose. Do you seriously think I'm going to cheat on you? Interesting question, because 24 hours earlier I would have answered immediately. Now, not so much. I think trust is easier when both people define loyalty the same way. The silence that followed could have frozen lava. Then came the explosion. This is because of that stupid video. One night at a bachelorette party has turned you into a paranoid detective. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because sometimes laughter is safer than honesty. A paranoid detective wouldn't have shown you the evidence. Her jaw tightened. Nothing happened. Maybe. I leaned back in my chair. Then signing shouldn't be a problem. Her eyes widened. For a second I thought I saw realization, because she suddenly understood the trap. If it truly didn't matter, then why object? Why fight? Why panic? The next couple of hours turned into a contact sport. Arguments, phone calls, messages. At one point her mother called me. At another point one of her bridesmaids called me. Apparently I had become public enemy number 1. The man attempting to destroy a perfectly good wedding by expecting consistency, an unforgivable crime. And through all of it, I kept hearing the same thing. You're overreacting. You're being unreasonable. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But nobody could explain why the new clause was such a problem. Not without accidentally proving my point. Then, 2 days before the wedding, something unexpected happened. Madeline signed it. No dramatic speech, no apology, no reconciliation. She simply signed her name, dropped the papers onto the table, and walked away. I should have felt relieved. Instead, for the first time since our engagement, I had the uncomfortable feeling that I was missing something. And I had no idea how right I was. The morning of the wedding felt strange. Most grooms are probably nervous about forgetting their vows or tripping in front of 200 people. I was busy wondering whether I was about to marry someone who genuinely believed loyalty had an expiration date. Ever since the video and our argument, something felt off. Madeline signed the revised prenup, but she never apologized, never admitted anything, never even acknowledged why I was upset. As far as she was concerned, the whole issue should have disappeared the moment she said, "It doesn't count." By early afternoon, guests were arriving. Family members were smiling. The venue looked beautiful. Everything was ready, including me. Or at least I thought I was. About 30 minutes before the ceremony, my best man Trevor pulled me aside. Immediately I knew something was wrong. Trevor was usually relaxed. Now he looked uncomfortable. "Grant, I need to show you something." Those are never good words to hear on your wedding day, or any day really. He handed me his phone. A video started playing. At first I saw a hotel lobby, people walking around. Then I saw Madeline. My stomach dropped instantly, because she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was the same man from the bar, the same guy from the video I received 3 days earlier. I watched them walk toward the elevators together, laughing, talking, comfortable. Then the video ended. I looked up at Trevor. When was this? Saturday night. The bachelorette party. I felt my chest tighten. "How did you get this?" "I recorded it." I stared at him. "My cousin's wedding was at the same hotel that weekend. I was sending a video to my girlfriend. Madeline ended up in the background." He paused, then added quietly, "I didn't think much about it until you showed me the bar video yesterday." I looked back at the screen. The timestamp was still visible, 1:47 a.m. Saturday night. The same night Madeline came home after 4 in the morning. The same night she avoided looking me in the eyes. The same night I'd convinced myself I was overthinking everything. Suddenly, I wasn't overthinking anymore. I was connecting dots. The bridesmaid's comment, the bar video, the hotel, the excuses, all of it. I looked toward the venue where our guests were already taking their seats, then back at the phone. For the first time since proposing to Madeline, I wasn't sure I wanted to stand at that altar. Trevor looked at me carefully. "What are you going to do?" I stared at the screen one last time, then slipped the phone into my pocket. I honestly don't know. I honestly didn't know what to do. That was the worst part. If Trevor had shown me a video of Madeline walking into a hotel room and then closing the door behind her, my decision would have been easy. Painful, but easy. Instead, what I had was exactly the kind of situation I hated most. Enough evidence to destroy my peace of mind. Not enough evidence to prove exactly what happened. Lawyers spend their careers dealing with facts. Facts are comfortable. Facts don't wake you up at 3 in the morning. Questions do. And suddenly I had a lot of questions. I watched the video again, then one more time. The answer never changed. Madeline and the guy from the bar entered the hotel together. They got into the elevator together. They got off on the guest room floor together. That was it. Nothing more, nothing less. Trevor sat beside me. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Finally, he sighed. "Maybe there's an explanation." I laughed, not because it was funny, because it sounded exactly like something people say when they know the explanation is probably terrible. "Sure. You don't know what happened after that." "No, and neither do I." "Also true." He looked relieved. Then I added, "But let's be honest, if I walked into a hotel at 2 in the morning with a woman I met at a bachelor party, would anybody be looking for innocent explanations?" Trevor immediately looked away. Exactly. We both knew the answer. I stood up and walked toward the venue. The ceremony was less than half an hour away. Guests were already taking their seats. The music had started. People were smiling, taking pictures, laughing. Meanwhile, I felt like I was carrying a grenade in my pocket, because that's what the phone felt like. The closer I got to the ceremony, the more one memory kept replaying in my head. The conversation after the bar video. Her response. "It doesn't count." That sentence bothered me more than anything, because innocent people usually defend their actions. I found myself wondering something I hadn't considered before. What if she'd already told herself a story? What if she'd convinced herself that whatever happened that night was acceptable because the wedding hadn't happened yet? People can justify almost anything if they try hard enough. I've seen it in court for years. Nobody wants to be the villain in their own story. They rewrite the rules instead. By the time I reached the groom's room, my stomach felt like concrete. A few minutes later, my mother came in. One look at her and I knew she could tell something was wrong. "Grant." "Mom, are you okay?" There it was. The question. The one I had been avoiding all day. Was I okay? No, not even remotely. But explaining that 5 minutes before a wedding seemed like a terrible idea. So I did what every emotionally healthy adult man does. I lied. "I'm fine." She studied me for several seconds, then nodded. I wasn't sure she believed me, but thankfully she let it go. After she left, I sat alone. The room suddenly felt very quiet. I looked at the clock. 15 minutes. 15 minutes until I either got married or destroyed an entire wedding. No pressure. I pulled out my phone. The hotel video, the bar video. I watched both again. The same guy, the same night, the same pattern. Then I noticed something, a detail I hadn't paid attention to before. In the hotel video, Madeline wasn't just following him. She touched his arm, briefly, naturally, the way people do when they're already comfortable with each other. It wasn't proof of anything, but it wasn't helping. I leaned back and closed my eyes, trying to be rational, trying to think like a lawyer, trying to think like a man who wasn't about to make one of the biggest decisions of his life. Then another memory surfaced. The prenup, the argument, the way she'd reacted. Not guilty, not ashamed, angry, as if I was the one who had broken something. And suddenly, a realization hit me. The videos weren't actually the biggest problem. The biggest problem was trust. Even if she somehow proved nothing happened in that hotel, even if she found the world's most innocent explanation, even if every suspicious detail had a reasonable answer, could I stand at that altar and honestly say I trusted her? The answer came immediately. And that scared me more than the videos, because for the first time since I'd proposed, the answer was no. A knock sounded on the door. The wedding coordinator smiled. "We're ready." 3 simple words. "We're ready." I almost laughed, because I was absolutely not ready. I adjusted my tie, took a deep breath, and followed her toward the ceremony. Every step felt heavier than the last. Guests turned and smiled as I passed. My family, my friends, people who believed they were about to witness the beginning of my marriage. Only Trevor knew the truth. Only Trevor knew that there was a very real chance this wedding was about to become the most expensive canceled event any of us had ever attended. Then I reached the altar. The music changed, everyone stood, and Madeline appeared at the end of the aisle. For a moment, everything else disappeared. She looked beautiful. Honestly, painfully beautiful. The kind of beautiful that makes you remember exactly why you fell in love in the first place. The kind of beautiful that makes you wish things were different. Then I remembered the hotel, the videos, the excuses, and the feeling vanished. Madeline smiled at me as she started walking down the aisle. I tried to smile back, but deep down I already knew something she didn't. This wedding wasn't going the way she thought it would. Madeline reached the altar and took my hands. Everyone looked happy. My mother was smiling. Her father looked proud. The photographer was already taking pictures. Meanwhile, I was standing there wondering if the woman beside me had spent the week lying to my face. The ceremony began. The officiant welcomed everyone. People laughed, people cried, people smiled. I heard almost none of it. Every time I looked at Madeline, I saw the hotel video. Madeline squeezed my hand. "You okay?" she whispered. I nodded automatically, but I wasn't, not even close. The officiant continued. Then came the vows. This was it, the point of no return. A few more minutes and we'd be married. Legally, officially. Permanently. The officiant turned toward me. "Grant, do you take Madeline?" And suddenly, I couldn't do it. I couldn't say yes. Not while those videos were sitting in my pocket. Not while I still didn't know the truth. "Wait." The word came out louder than I intended. The officiant stopped. The entire venue went silent. Madeline looked confused. "Grant?" I slowly released her hands. My heart was pounding. 200 people were staring at me. I didn't care. I pulled out my phone. Madeline's expression changed immediately. Real fear. And in that moment, I knew this conversation was about to go very differently than she'd expected. "Before we do this," I said, "I need an answer to something." The room remained silent. Madeline forced a smile. "Grant, what are you doing?" I looked directly at her. "The night of your bachelorette party." The smile disappeared. Completely. Now the guests were looking back and forth between us, confused, concerned, whispering. I continued. "3 days ago, I received a video from a bar." Madeline's face turned pale. "Grant." "I received another one." Now she wasn't smiling at all. I held up the phone. "This one was taken at a hotel." The silence became suffocating, and for the first time all day, Madeline looked genuinely scared. She stared at me, then at the phone, then back at me. "Grant, not here." That was her first response. Not, "What hotel?" Not, "What video?" Not, "You're mistaken." Just, "Not here." That told me everything. I looked at the officiant. "Sorry." Then I turned the phone toward Madeline. "You know exactly what I'm talking about." She lowered her voice. "We can discuss this later." I shook my head. "No. Later was 3 days ago." The guests were openly whispering now. My mother looked confused. Her parents looked worried. Trevor stood silently beside me. Madeline stepped closer. "You're embarrassing both of us." I looked directly into her eyes. "Why were you there with him?" For a second she said nothing. Then she made a mistake. A huge mistake. Instead of denying it, she started explaining it. "We were just talking." I immediately noticed. She wasn't denying going to the hotel. She wasn't denying being with him. She was trying to justify it. The same thing she'd done after the bar video. I felt something inside me sink. "At 2 in the morning?" She crossed her arms. "You don't know what happened?" "Then tell me." Another pause. A long one. Too long. The guests were listening to every word now. Finally she sighed. And then she said the sentence that ended everything. "It was one night." The room went completely silent. It meant nothing. I saw her mother close her eyes. Even she knew where this was going. Madeline looked directly at me, as if she genuinely expected me to understand. "As far as I'm concerned, we weren't married yet." There it was. Again. The same logic. The same excuse. The same complete lack of understanding about why any of this mattered. I stared at her. "Are you serious?" She looked frustrated now, like I was being unreasonable. "It happened before the wedding." I couldn't believe what I was hearing, not because she had apparently gone to that hotel, because she still didn't understand the problem. Or maybe she did understand. Maybe she just didn't care. Either way, the result was the same. I slowly nodded. Then I looked around the room, at our families, at our friends, at the guests who had spent the entire day celebrating a marriage that no longer existed. Then I looked back at Madeline, and for the first time all week, I felt calm. Because the decision was finally obvious. I took the wedding ring, the one I had been planning to put on in the next few minutes, and placed it on the table beside the officiant. Madeline's eyes widened. "Grant," I shook my head. "No. You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm serious." I looked directly at her. "I can forgive mistakes." Her expression changed slightly. "Hope." For one brief second, I saw hope. Then I finished the sentence. "But I can't marry someone who thinks loyalty starts on a calendar date." I took a step back. Maybe I wasn't your husband yet. The room was so quiet I could hear people breathing. But you were supposed to be my wife. Madeline opened her mouth. I didn't let her speak. Goodbye, Madeline. Then I turned around and walked away. The strange thing was that I expected someone to stop me. I expected shouting, arguments, maybe even someone grabbing my arm and telling me I was making a mistake. None of that happened. As I walked down the aisle, people simply moved aside. A few guests looked shocked. A few looked angry. Most just looked confused. Behind me, I heard voices starting to rise. Then several voices at once. Then chaos. But I didn't turn around. I was done. Outside the venue, Trevor caught up with me. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Then he handed me my car keys. You okay? No. Fair. That was probably the most honest conversation I'd had all week. A few minutes later, my phone started exploding. Calls, texts, voicemails, Madeline, then her mother, then one of her bridesmaids, then Madeline again. I ignored all of them. I drove home, walked into an apartment that was still filled with wedding decorations, and for the first time all week, I sat down in complete silence. No excuses, no arguments, no videos, no explanations, just silence. A few hours later, I finally listened to one of Madeline's voicemails. Grant, please call me. The next one sounded less emotional, more frustrated. Then another. Every message had the same theme. I was overreacting. I was throwing away 4 years. I was letting one night destroy everything. What I never heard was, I'm sorry. That part never came. Over the following weeks, reality started cleaning up the mess. Vendors got paid, deposits were lost, guests went home. Families picked sides. A few people thought I did the right thing. A few people thought I was crazy. I honestly didn't care. One thing did surprise me, though. Several weeks after the wedding, Trevor called me. Apparently, one of Madeline's former bridesmaids had a falling out with the group. And when friendships end, secrets suddenly become much less important. According to her, the hotel wasn't some spontaneous decision. The girls knew about the guy. More importantly, they knew before the bachelorette party. Suddenly, that strange comment I overheard made perfect sense. If he's really the one night won't matter. It wasn't a joke. It never was. They had already decided what was acceptable. They just forgot to ask me. As for Madeline, I heard bits and pieces through mutual friends. At first, she blamed me. Then she blamed Trevor. Then she blamed the bridesmaids. Eventually, she ran out of people to blame. I never called. She eventually stopped trying, and that was that. 4 years together. Gone. Sometimes people ask if I regret walking away. The answer is simple. No. Because weddings aren't promises. They're confirmations. The promise is supposed to happen before the wedding, not after it. And if someone needs a ceremony before they start acting loyal, they're probably not ready for marriage. The funniest part? The most expensive divorce of my life turned out to be the one I never had. And after seeing how close I came to marrying Madeline, that lost wedding deposit feels like the best investment I've ever made. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.